into existence.
Good morning, guys. I am troubleshooting some stuff with my streaming doohickey, so sorry I'm a few minutes late, but really glad to be here. Today we are going to be talking about iZotope RX, and there's been a bunch of new tools that have come out in the past, I don't know, 6 to 12 months that have been really useful for sound editors and video editors and basically anybody working with production sounds or even just editing videos. But the kind of king of dealing with difficult noises is always going to be iZotope RX. Well, I shouldn't say always. Right now it's iZotope RX. It's been that way for a long time. There are new tools that I've seen people starting to use, like spectral layers and Acon noise reduction suite. So there's a lot of options out there for dealing with difficult noises in post-production, but today I really wanted to focus in on iZotope RX and how to become super efficient with using it. So I've got videos covering how to use the individual tools in iZotope, and we can go into that a little bit more, but today I really wanted to focus on like improving your speed and developing workflows to like make you efficient. So I got my screen up here, chat on the left, we've got ProTools open. I will talk a little bit about other programs because I've talked about this a bit in other videos. The like fortune teller in me is seeing a future where Pro Tools gets sunsetted and we as audio professionals are working in an NLE with the picture editors. And I've been the past couple months really diving into DaVinci Resolve and keeping track of all the developments and testing them out, and the workflow of ingesting footage and starting your edit and then locking the edit and sending it out to a post house. I feel like that is just going to be as antiquated as 35mm or mag workflows are to us, So if you're interested in keeping your career alive longer than like the next 4 or 5 years, I would say try to learn DaVinci Resolve or Premiere because that's going to keep your skills useful for longer, as I feel like productions are going to move towards a unified workflow. So we will talk about how to use iZotope with Resolve a tiny bit, but I know a lot of you use Pro Tools, so that's what we're looking at to start with. So the thing I was struggling with this morning is I've got this hardware stream box, which is really great. It makes it to where I can like do picture-in-picture and all kinds of cool stuff. But I have re-jiggered the way it's integrated to my monitors, and I used to be able to send audio from my HDMI cable to the stream box and then back to my monitor. So I use the HDMI output to send you guys a clean audio feed, and it's not working. So it's like, you guys want to be able to hear this stuff. It's more important that we hear it in iZotope, so I think maybe what I'll do first, this would be a good thing to show you. In iZotope, figure out how you want to monitor your noise reduction adventures. So you've got driver type. If you go to preferences, audio, driver type, you've got no audio, which doesn't help you, and then you've got core audio on a Mac, which is going to use the audio devices you have available on the on your computer, or you can do RX monitor, which then you launch a plugin in Pro Tools to use your Pro Tools routing. So I'm going to switch this to core audio, and I'm going to attempt to use the I don't need an input. I'm going to attempt to use the Go stream, and we'll see if you guys can hear this. Oh, so yeah, we cannot. Let me go to Pro Tools and make sure. So the issue I was running into here is that in the aux IO tab, you've got in Pro Tools, you've got your aux IO, and I've got that. This is some weird sample rate. It's probably 32. It might be 44.1, I guess. So let me take that off and see if that helps my iZotope see it. All right, go stream. No. So this is going to be a visual only, I guess. That's fine because it's really talking about workflows and not the nuts and bolts of how you remove noises. So I'll set this back. But that is how you would set it up. I like, if I'm working in Pro Tools, I use RX Monitor. If I'm not working in Pro Tools, I use Core Audio. So that's the very first thing. Here in Preferences, let me make sure I've got chat up here. If you guys have any questions about stuff I'm talking about, I'm trying not to go super fast. I also need to turn on, I got Keycaster. Somebody asked to, let me make sure. Yeah, somebody asked for key logging and visual. So you should down here in the left corner see the key commands I'm using. So it's going to be kind of over the chat. Can you open your Pro Tools settings again? Sure. So yeah, the way I normally have this set up to stream is I use aux IO, and I send the audio to this, the LG. I have two of these, so I'm guessing that it's seeing the left one and not the right one because of the way it's plugged in. So I'll have to like do some cable swapping and stuff to get clean audio. The other thing I was thinking about is I could just run a hardline from my interface to my streamer. I think that's what I'll do next time. I mean, it's an extra cable, but I don't want you guys to be subject to that troubleshooting. So, okay, so keylogger should be up so you guys can see what I'm doing. So if you want to be fast and precise with iZotope, what you want to do is you want to set things up to where, oh, and they said stream is a little quiet. Let me go to, thank you for letting me know that. Let me go here and bring that up, check 1, 2. The other thing I can do is, I mean, that is set up. Check, check, check. That's probably better. Okay, there we go. That seems better. I'm peaking at like -6 or so. So if it seems too quiet, just let me know and I can always adjust this up or down. So, okay, what was I talking about? I was talking about shortcuts, doing shortcuts in iZotope. So the biggest way I see iZotope misused is people do batch processing. They will highlight the whole file, they'll bring up a module chain, and this can be great if you don't have a lot of time. You can see I've got presets for different things. And like these presets are actually on my website if you want some starting points for stuff. But it uses the built-in tools to like get you kind of close with different problems. You know, good boom, noisy boom, booster, fully in ADR mix room recorded. That's like if I just open up a mic by my workstation here, and I've got presets for labs. So these were all used on most of the shows that I worked on a couple years ago. But just in the past year, I've started to shy away from doing batch processing. So I really suggest you develop keyboard shortcuts for iZotope so that you can just be fast and precise. Because once you get into, you know, batch processing everything like this, and then derussell and like dialogue isolate, like you're really starting to degrade the audio quality, which is not good. So what you do in iZotope, and this works with all the modern versions of iZotope, go to Preferences, go to Keyboard, and then you can save presets. Do I have mine? Let me save this preset real quick. I can probably put this on my website even. So what I like to do is have the top row of numbers on my keyboard be my most used modules in iZotope. So the most used modules in iZotope tend to be declick, decrackle, and then deplosive for me, and then spectral repair is used quite a bit, and then deconstruct is kind of my secret weapon. So whatever you use, just focus on those. So then you go to show commands containing and type in declick. So then you have apply declick. You can see I have that set to 1 on my keyboard. So if I'm normally with my left hand doing, normal keyboard stuff, WASD, like I'm playing a first-person shooter, that 1 is going to be right close to where my ring finger needs to be. So it's super accessible. I don't have to use a stream deck or anything that takes my hand off the keyboard. I see a lot of people talk about stream decks and how great they are, and they get the Instagram picture of it on their desk, and it's like, yeah, but you're taking your hand off the keyboard and you're moving it over, which is fine. Like, it gives you a tiny bit of exercise, I guess, but for speed, you really don't want to take your hands off the keyboard. It's like playing a game. Like, you want to be fast. So the less macro movements you have, the faster you're going to be. So declick for me is set to 1. If you go to decrackle, which is kind of my second most used, apply decrackle, that is set to number 2. And then spectral repair, apply spectral repair, replace, I use attenuate the most, and then replace the second most on spectral repair. So I have that set to 3 and 4. So I suggest setting the top 4 as like your most used commands. And really, if you're doing precise editing, those commands should be declick, decrackle, and then probably spectral repair. Deconstruct is kind of a secret weapon I like to use. This module separates the audio signal into a tonal, a noisy, and if this box is checked, you can also separate the transient gain out. So that would include ticks, pops, plosives, bumps, that kind of thing. So this is so useful because, for example, on this, I'm not even gonna look. I'm like stuck on Pro Tools shortcuts. That's why I did R and T. If I look here, let me find a good example. Let's say I wanted to take out like some of this breathiness here. I can feather the selection, and then I can lower the noisy gain just a little bit. And so 5 on my keyboard is deconstruct. And so that takes away some of the like noisy layer of the audio. This works really well for stuff that happens simultaneously to the dialogue, like if there's a plate clank or a bump or a door slam, or I mean, take your pick. Like you could do a police siren with this by leaving the noisy and transient up and taking the tonal down, and then tracing the siren like this, because sirens do like an oscillation. So this is a really powerful module to use, and so it's right on the top of my keyboard. So keyboard shortcuts is kind of the #1 thing I tell people, which is get your keyboard shortcuts in iZotope set up to be very accessible to right under your fingertips. Don't worry about spending money for a stream deck and having, I mean, if you want the clout of having a stream deck and the shininess of it and the buttons and the little logos you can make, and paying the monthly fee and downloading scripts and trying to make your own scripts and failing because you don't understand coding, by all means go the stream deck route. It's totally fine. Make that guy some money. No problem with that. But if you just want to be fast and you want to save some money, set up keyboard shortcuts in iZotope. That's like the quickest way to get super fast. In doing that, what you can do is if I'm, you know, editing this clip, for example, and there's a whole bunch of ticks up here, I can just quickly go through and do keyboard shortcuts to just kind of zap them out of here. And some of them I might have to use spectral repair on, you know, but after you get into the flow and the experience of using it, you'll have your shortcuts set and you can just bam, bam, bam right through it. So, yeah, that's kind of tip number one. I'm going to go through some comments really fast. Let's see who we got. We got Hillpost, Bill Shep, Zakar, Marful Studios, Master Nelson, Mike Wax, Brandon Wells, Tiziano. So thank you guys, channel members. You guys are, and gals, are the people that keep this channel alive. And it's really great having you guys on the stream. It's great. It's been great talking on Discord with everyone. Just let me pull up, let me do this without sharing all my browser tabs. And you guys don't need to see my personal email. I mean, I don't get a ton of spam, but still. Okay, so Discord. We got our Discord here, and this is for channel members only. So if you join the channel as a member, you get access to this. We've added a voice channel, and then we've added a production sound. Holy cow, this thing, I just added this yesterday, and there's been already a bunch of stuff I need to go through. We also have a member of the week. So the member of the week for last week was Chase, and then before that it was Jay. And so this is where we give a shout out to members, and nobody's taken me up on it yet, but they get like a little consultation time with me to talk about whatever they want, go over a project or whatever, and then they just get kudos for keeping the discussion lively, and you know, all the other stuff that people do on message boards. So thank you guys for that. Back here in Pro Tools, we talked about doing keyboard shortcuts in iZotope, which is great. But the question is, how do you quickly get the audio out of your timeline into iZotope? And the way we do that, I can close this now, is with a plugin called RX Connect. So this is actually on my second screen at the moment, but it looks like this. Just put it in the middle here. So unfortunately with Pro Tools, and this is something that I'll talk about on Thursday's video this week, about some of the comparisons between Pro Tools and DaVinci Resolve. And something like, it's an annoyance in Pro Tools. It's been incorporated into our workflows for the past whatever, you know. But it's just kind of a stupid thing. And so here's the stupid thing. Let's say I need to clean this line up, and then I send this to iZotope. No, I don't need to save it. And I clean it up. I'm just going to plow through with a bunch of terrible batch presets. Selected audio device cannot be opened. And this is going to just spam me with that. So I'll go here, audio. Let's do RX monitor. Okay, so I'm just going to batch process and do a terrible job because I don't really care. Do that, replace, whatever. It's going to sound all digital and stretchy and bad, and decrackle, whatever, you know, do all that. So now I have to send it back to Pro Tools, and I have to render. So how many clicks is that? So 1 to send, not counting the stuff I do in iZotope. This can be however many. 2 to send back, and then 3 to render. Not only that, but let's say I oopsied on this processing, and I do not like this processing. I need to go back. I did too much. Well, I have to either hit undo, but let's say I moved on. You know, I've gone down the timeline, I've done a bunch of other edits, and I come back to this, and the director says, that's too processed. I liked all that noise, put it back. How do I do that? Okay, so I have to go to, hopefully I saved a copy on my X tracks, which I did down here. So this is a second set of tracks where I'm basically using this as an undo playlist. The other thing I can do is a trick I've showed before. Make sure this track is set to a field recorder, guide track, and then right click matching field recorder channels and go back to one of 20 iterations of this, or go back to the original AAF. So the process of undoing is just not very conducive to this kind of workflow. So I need to make sure I'm really cautious about saving a copy of my work. The great thing about Resolve, and I'll launch this while I yap at you, is the layered audio editing in the Fairlight tab. What this does, and hopefully this will launch with Pro Tools and I'll be able to show you, what this does is allows you to access every iteration of an audio clip that you have non-destructively and go back, to every step. It's kind of like an undo history for every track. So that's something that to me is like huge, as just a sound/dialogue editor, to be able to go. I'll show you this. It's telling me the video I/O is taken by Pro Tools, but so here on this lav track, see this grayed out thing here? This clip is actually an older version. So if I were to edit something in iZotope, I'll show you on this boom track. In Resolve, instead of having RX Connect open, all I have to do is right click, external audio process iZotope, bring that up, process it, do my stuff, save it, which is a different workflow. There's no sending back. You just save the file, and then if I go back into Resolve, it populates on top of my old audio. Now let's say I don't like this tweak that I've done. Then I can just enable, which is Command M, mute basically, go back to the original. It's that simple. It's like having playlists on every track. But unlike playlists in Pro Tools, I don't have to, conform them and hide and show for conforms. Like, it's all just going to move around with my footage. So that is one reason why I think that Pro Tools is kind of on borrowed time, because I can't do that in Pro Tools. I cannot do that. I have to process. I have to have extracts. It's all fine. Like all the dialogue editors that I work with do that workflow, but it creates this chain of messy, clips and everything that are just kind of floating around in the session. Versus in Fairlight, they're very where they're right in front of you and they move along with stuff. So that's kind of my rant for that. Anyways, if I want to speed up this audio suite kind of kludged workflow, yes, you can buy a Stream Deck and spend your money on that, but I really like Keyboard Maestro for this. Keyboard Maestro, I think, cost me $29, not per month, not per year, just $29. So it's like, the price of one person eating at Five Guys. So it's super, well, not super affordable. It's affordable enough where, yes, I will use this. It has saved me so much time because I can set up macros. And you can see I have macros for only 3 things. And I've used this on hundreds of hours of dialogue edits. So I've got declick, which is Option or Alt C. I have render to RX Connect, which is Option R. And then I've got send to RX Connect, which is Option S. So the way I use these is I'm going to have to move this window back over here because Keyboard Maestro, you can set up macros so many different ways. For me, the easiest is to make the mouse go to a certain point. You can see I've got this command will execute the following actions. It's going to click at this value from the top left corner of the main screen. So you have to have window layouts that are consistent. So it's going to move my mouse, click, move it back. So that's what I need to do for that. So I'll show you how quick this can be. So I'm going to do send, and then I'm going to do a render. So I've got this. I've already processed this. Let's just go here. So send, do my cleanup, whatever. I'm just going to do a terrible job. And then the other shortcut I forgot to mention is in iZotope RX. Keyboard, and then show send. Send back to host is tab for me. So let me repeat this so I can really show you how fast it is. And if anybody wants to time me on a stopwatch, we can do a John Henry. Okay, so send. I'm going to do Command S. I'm going to go there. I'm going to do my editing. I'm going to hit tab to send back, and then I'm going to render. So that was quick, right? Here it is again. Let me pick a different clip here. Command S. Ooh, a lot of ticks in there. We've got this little engine here. I will deconstruct that out. I'm going to send it back, and I'm going to render it. Done. So it's that quick. That's how quick we can send things to iZotope with Keyboard Mastro. Is a Stream Deck going to be faster than that? I'll bet you $100 it's not faster than that. Because when you get in the flow of doing that, the other thing you can do is like ticks. You know, ticks, clicks, pops, whatever you want to call them, are just endemic and stuff. And if you have a declick setup, you can just go like, let me actually switch to slip mode, which I prefer when I'm dealing with this stuff. You can just go through, and the only limitation you have is the speed of the processor. So I'm declicking these just by highlighting and hitting Command C. That's it. So you can just buzz through, instead of batch processing a whole chain of files, you can go through and surgically take clicks out, you know, faster than any machine can do it currently, and with more care and precision. So yeah, I'm going to go through some comments really fast. Have you used, Brandon A. Wells says, have you used the RX Spectral Editor ARA integration with versus the standalone plugin? So I have heard from people I highly respect that the ARA integration in ProTools is not ready for prime time yet. They have used it with not so much iZotope, but like the auto line post too, which is what we use to line up lavs and booms. And they've done like an entire reel of a show, and they've opened it back up and all the work is gone. Or they do that and then they have to iZotope the clip and they have to realign it. So it seems like the ARA integration is not up to snuff yet, and that kind of thing scares me, like having, you know, days of work lost because of a software glitch. So I still use the standalone process. I do remember with iZotope RX2, which dates me, like I'm super old, they had a standalone spectral editor plugin. And I wanted to make sure this wasn't like the, what is it called? The Mandela effect, where it's like, did I imagine this? Did I imagine that RX2 had a standalone spectral editor? And I'll check it out today. I'm 99% sure that iZotope RX2 had a standalone spectral editor, meaning we've gone backwards in 9 versions, having to wait for ARA integration from iZotope. It's really stupid. So good question. I have the ability to use ARA integration, but I haven't, just out of basically fear of hearing horror stories from other people. James says, once I'm in RX, no use for Stream Deck, but for other stuff, it's great. That's fine. Is there a way to send to RX Connect with a shortcut via Audio Suite? So I kind of showed you that. You have to use some third-party thing. Like I said, I like Keyboard Mastro. It is super affordable. It's basic. It's not shiny and new, but this has been around for so long. And a lot of dialogue editors use Keyboard Maestro. I think some re-recording mixers do too. Okay. So it looks like James just joined as a member. That is really cool. Thank you, James. And then Charles says, I use Pro Tools playlist for when you're too far on your undo list for iZotope renders. Yeah, you can do, the problem with playlists is once you start conforming stuff or moving things around, the playlists just throw a wrench into the works. I used to do playlists, but it's kind of like this, you know, if I do duplicate main playlist and I do that. So now if I'm like, you know what, I'm going to move this track down here, then it's still orphaned on this playlist. And I don't like that at all. And then if you conform, that's the other thing. Like when I start having to move stuff because they change picture, then I have to make sure like all the playlists are visible, and I forget how to do it. Like, gosh, there's a way to show the playlists. I forget how to do it because I just don't use it very much. Man, how do you do that? Is it that? It's not that. There's a way to do it. It's escaping me at the moment. Somebody remind me, because yeah, it's been a while. Okay, so yeah, I don't use playlists at all. Let's see. Deshaun, the director, says, "Hey Thomas, big fan of your work, trying to be like you when I grow up." I'm still trying to be like me when I grow up. You change waveform to playlist. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. And then it does that. So you have to do that for all of them. And if you have like 200 tracks, it gets cumbersome and you're moving around stuff and your machine will be like, I don't like this. So yeah. Let's see. Paul says, which mouse are you using? Let me see if the USB will reach. I have a Kensington, what is this? Expert mouse, Kensington Expert mouse. So this is, it's got the little trackball thing and then the buttons, which you can see I'm like wearing through. Can you see? Yeah, that shows up. I'm wearing through this button right here where my thumb is. So I've used these since I started back in 2008, and it just becomes kind of a part of your, almost like an extension of your hand. Some people don't like trackballs, and I've seen people use just the Apple mouse and all kinds of doohickeys. So use whatever you're comfortable with. I like trackballs. It seems like I don't get any carpal tunnel from them, and it's fast. And then the gross thing, this is super gross. This guy I worked with on Knights of the Old Republic, I was super green, just starting out, and I was hired to come in and edit voiceover because they were doing all kinds of expansion packs for it. And so at my workstation, they had a trackball mouse, and I was like struggling to keep up with this guy, and this guy was just like sitting back in his chair, like blazing through lines, and I was like, man, how, like, you know, teach me your ways, Obi-Wan. Show me how to be fast like you. And he said, well, the very first thing you need to do is take the ball out of your Kensington trackball and rub it on your forehead and just soak up all that grease off your head, and then slap that bad boy back in the mouse, and you get a nice smooth action with the ball, and that's gonna make you more efficient, like greasing a Zerk fitting on an axle. And so after throwing up on my mouth a little bit, I actually tried it, and it works really well. So that's a little pro tip for you guys. Okay, back to the comments here. I've used Aura on a short. It worked well enough, but it felt like it made the session run a bit slower. Yeah, I don't like that. Everybody's telling me how to do waveform to playlist. For you, is there any difference between Audio Suite or send it to the editor? Okay, I understand. I think I understand your question here. And feel free to ask in Spanish too, because I can translate it. So you do have the option to use declick and decrackle and not all the modules, a lot of the modules in Pro Tools as Audio Suite plugins. Like I could use DRustle on this. And I do not like to do that with anything except for declick. The reason I don't like to do that is because all these processes, for example, if I were to use decrackle. So I've got decrackle here. Let me load my favorite settings, which is high, about 2.2, and then amplitude -10. So if I were to decrackle this, I don't like doing this. For one, it takes longer. It actually takes longer to run an Audio Suite plugin in Pro Tools than it does to run the module in iZotope. And I don't know why. But the main reason I don't like to do that is because in Pro Tools, the only selection you can make is a time selection. So I can select, you know, a second or 2 seconds or 10 seconds. What I can't do is do a time and frequency selection. However, if I send it to iZotope with my shortcut, I can just decrackle the high frequencies, or I can just take a tick out of the low end. Or if I need to lower a transient by, a certain amount, I can do that. Like I can select a two-dimensional area of time and frequency. So for me, being able to do that, to do a time selection or a frequency selection, or my preference, which is 2D, or even painting it to where it's like, it can be whatever shape I want. The ability to do this is the thing that I'm really missing from Pro Tools, where I can only do a time selection. And when, years ago, we used to have the spectral editor in Pro Tools, it was nice because it was actually an audio suite plugin, and you could just do it in the session. I don't mind sending it to the standalone, and that's generally how I process every single one of my clips, because I can do multiple processes. I don't have to have 5 different plugin windows open. Really, the only thing I have on my second monitor is D-Click and RX Connect, and that's it. And like I said, they're in specific positions so that Keyboard Mastro can grab them. So that's why I do it that way. So good question. Charles says, and I use a shortcut to pick between audio, command and arrow down, up. Good. Okay, so let's see. Master Nelson says, using Boom and Labs often results in more tracks to clean up in RX. Is using AAP2 only on wide shot problem boom audio a valid approach? I use it on every shot. You could probably get by with that. That's kind of like the old-fashioned way of editing dialogue, which is you only use the mics you need. So booms on close-ups and labs on wide shot, and that workflow should be fine for you. I like to edit all the mics that sound good so that the mixer can choose, or if I'm mixing, I can choose. Maybe, as I'm mixing, the labs just aren't cutting through or whatever. So, yeah. I prefer to just cut everything. Deshaun says, what was one of the hardest things or parts starting out as a sound mixer editor into going into industry? That's a good question. It's off topic, but who cares? It's fine. Okay, the hardest thing for me was starting out, the first 5 years really were really difficult. I don't come from a wealthy family, quite the opposite actually. And I don't have like a sugar mama or a wealthy benefactor to pay my bills. Like, it was hand to mouth for many years. And you still go through slow times where financially it can be challenging. And then the other thing that was really difficult, the kind of along with that, is climbing out of the low budget, I don't want to say crappy, but just the low quality, low budget projects. Because starting out, you have to do a lot. You have to do volume work. In your first year, you're not going to get hired to work on a Hollywood tentpole production unless you have that connection, the nepotism that just sucks you into the machine. If you're starting out and you're clawing your way out of the gutter basically, and you're trying to scrap and put stuff together, and you don't have a lot of money, and you're really just trying to make your career get off the ground, take as many jobs as you can, get the experience, and eventually, as your skills increase, the quality of your work will increase. And if you also network at the same time, the quality of the projects that you work on will climb with you. But you have to start somewhere. And people come in with like big heads and think, because they did a couple of sound redesigns in college, they can just go to like a AAA game or a studio feature, and they're just gonna slide right into working with big shots. And it doesn't work that way. You have to put in your time, and you have to kind of earn your stripes basically. So that was the hardest thing, is just the grind of that. just like starting out in a video game as like a low-level fresh spawn, like you have to build your skills, build your equipment, and build your network. And that's another thing, like use every job, every project as a way to get more work, because most of your work is going to come from word of mouth and people sharing, hey, I know this really great sound guy or sound gal. Here's their information. That's where your work is going to come from. So yeah, that's kind of been the biggest struggle. And now with the industry changing, it's another kind of struggle time for me, which I've got the credits, I've got the career, I've got the experience, and there's just no work. So be prepared for that. Like if you're coming into the industry right now, it's a really difficult time. Make sure you have other skills that can put food on your table, pay your bills, because there's slow times and you have to be prepared for that. You got to be prepared to go out to the woods and cut firewood for your family, or work a couple months at a job that is really beneath you, but you just have to, especially if you have kids or a wife, like you have to be man or woman enough to step up and kind of take the hit to your pride and provide for the family. So yeah, that's been the hardest thing. Okay, so let's see. Does decrackle mess with audio that much? It doesn't. Decrackle to me is the most gentle. It's even more gentle than mouth declick in iZotope. Kind of my most used tools are declick, decrackle, and deconstruct. Mouth declick I've pretty much sworn off of. I really don't like it. Some people just batch process everything with mouth declick, and the best thing that I've found is to be precise. You can use very aggressive settings with declick if you're precise. You know, what you can't do is use aggressive settings and batch process stuff. It's going to take away, look at all the stuff it took away. You know, like that is not good. That's too much. You really want to do no harm. You just want to take away the yucky stuff. So be precise with your selections, and then you can be a little more aggressive with your processing. And don't be afraid to multi-process things. You know, like a tool is only as good as when it's being used. And sometimes, like you can see here, I had a tick, and I had to use deconstruct on it, which is 3, to really fully get it out. So yeah. Do you realign clips with AAP2 after denoising? Generally, no. If you are using an AI tool or something that is not repeatable in the sense of it phase cancels itself with each process. In other words, if you use a plugin that processes audio differently every time, you may have to realign your clips. Mike says, if you need to make the same edit on multiple tracks, Boom and Live, do you typically send one mic at a time or both? That is the question of the day. So yeah, really great question. Like super detailed, advanced, something I forgot to talk about. So let me show you that. Okay, we've got some stuff here. I can see there's a tick on the Boom. It's much more pronounced on the Lav. Let's say I don't want this tick in here. How I deal with this is I highlight and I send, which is Option S for me. And you can see what that does because of the settings I have in Connect. I have it set to individual clip by clip. This maintains your handles and it lets you process clips individually, which for me and dialogue editing is the way to go. In iZotope, you can see I've got Boom and Lav. It doesn't tell me the names, but I can tell just by looking at the profile of the mics. So I've got my Boom and I got my Lav. And I can see they both have the same 2.5 ticks in there. The cool thing to do, if you're editing the way I like to, which is frame by frame, you can collapse these like this and edit them both at the same time. So now I can highlight these ticks and just quickly go through. This one's a full range one. Sometimes you'll get a little hole created by tick removing. So this is where using spectral repair replace can fill in that tiny little gap. There's a little high frequency left here, so let me just get that out. And then let's say I want to completely remove these. You can see I'm okay with multiple processing, because I'd rather get it out cleanly with no artifacts with lesser settings. On spectral repair, if you're using attenuate, keep your strength around like half, like 0.4, 0.5. If you get over 1, it's going to just lower the volume on stuff. But if you keep it around 0.5 or so, it's going to smoothly remove stuff, even if you might have to do it multiple times. It's not going to take out everything. So you can see stacking them has made it to where I can edit both clips at the same time. They both have the noises removed, and then I can send it back and I can render it, and there you go. So that's how I do 2 mics or more at once. You can do 10 mics at the same time. What's the deconstruct setting you're running with? I find whenever I go for it, I have to mess with the sliders for a while. Good question. Here in deconstruct, it really depends on what I'm using this for. If, for example, I'm using this to take out a carby, it's really good for that. There's a little bit of a carby here. This might be a boat, actually. I am not doing minus infinity. I'm usually doing minus 12 or so. And the goal with all of your noise reduction isn't to completely nuke the noise from orbit. It is to reduce the noise to an acceptable level. So that's a huge mistake I see people make, is just too much. They're trying to get it all out. And you really just need to get it to where it disappears, which can be 6 dB, it could be 12 dB, it could be 4 dB. Like, just mess with that and then render it, and it'll take out, you know, as much of it as you can. For noisy gain, you're probably going to be limited to like -6 or -10, somewhere on there. Transient, this is a really cool trick for like lowering a transient or increasing it. And this is generally like +6 to -6 for me. Okay, really good questions, guys. Okay, I've also noticed that the more bands in spectral repair you choose, the better it handles lower frequencies. High frequencies better with less bands. That's interesting. I guess I could see that. Yeah, and you can see I have it down pretty low, 128. So, okay, so you're saying the more bands you choose, the better it handles low frequencies. I think that would make sense, because you're attenuating more of the in-between stuff versus the more of the noise instead of the signal. So I'll have to play around with that. See, there's always stuff you learn even after you use a tool for, 15 years. Like, there's still stuff you don't know about it. So this is one of the great things about the YouTube channel, is you guys are sharing this with me, and I get to learn. So I benefit just as much as you guys do. You can check with that low rumble. If you choose a high number of bands, it won't work that well. Okay, let's try it. I don't really like doing rumble reduction in iZotope. I like to use an EQ for that. Okay, so let's do 4096, and then undo, and then 128. It kind of looks like it did the same thing, but I will take your word for that. Riley says, curious about auto-align workflow as well. Do you ever have to realign after using RX? Generally, no. Sometimes I have to align things multiple times or use different settings in auto-align post, because especially with the latest version, they mess with the algorithm a little bit. This is going to depend on like which mics are being used and all kinds of stuff, but my general process is to align first, then fill and fade and edit, and then go through with iZotope and actually do cleanup. Deshaun says, crazy question, but how did you know that you were ready to step into 5.1, 7.1 surround Dolby Atmos? Were you nervous taking a big step like that? I bought my first 5.1 system, like monitor setup, when I was still in college, because I knew I wanted to work on films, feature films. So it was just like, the films are mixed in surround. So I started working in surround. I think if you're working in stereo, if you're coming from a music background, then when to invest the money and time into setting up a 5.1 monitor system would probably be determined by the types of jobs you're getting. Once you start working on independent films, like if they're going to festivals or, you know, even just a theater screening for the director in their hometown, you really need to be working in 5.1. So yeah, if you're doing any amount of post work, I would say you probably should have a 5.1 setup, unless you're just solely doing it for web. But even that, like, I think immersive mixing for web is, for, you know, web video content is like, we're pretty close. We're moments away, as they like to say on set. So now's a good time. There's a lot of affordable monitor options out there. It's pretty accessible with like ProTools and DaVinci. Both of them, like the cheaper versions, have surround support and Atmos support. So yeah, I think now is as good a time as any. A couple iZotope specific questions. Is iZotope Elements Bundle good enough? Let me check it out. Let me see. Ugh, I cannot type. All right, let me bring this up here. Yeah, you guys can see this. Okay, iZotope Elements Bundle has, it says everything you need to repair, mix, and master. Let's see if that's true. Well, I want to know what is in Elements. Overview. Neutron, I don't think you need that. RX Elements. Ugh, gosh, just tell me what it has. There is no results for RX Elements. Is it just... I mean, it doesn't tell me what it comes with. Yeah, Kevin says moments away generally means I have time to go grab coffee. That's true. I kind of miss being on set. Okay, here we go. Neutron, RX Elements. Learn more. Okay, what do we have? Repair Assistant, which I never use. Declick plugin. Oh. I mean, I would say no. Well, it's 99 bucks. Let's see what standard comes with. Yeah, I think if you're doing dialogue, you kind of have to at least have standard. Advanced would be better, but it's 1,200 bucks. So that's a lot of money. Yeah. I mean, at that price point, maybe look into Steinberg spectral layers, because that's, yeah, that's crazy. Okay, sorry I'm late, but what version of iZotope is this? I'm using RX11 Advanced. How much noise is too much noise? That's a really good question. If you're talking about broadband noise, I would say when it starts to mask other elements of the mix, like music, then it's too much. Or if it masks intelligibility of the dialogue, then it's too much. But generally, our brain is a much better noise filter than any plugin. So I like to leave a lot of texture and noise in my dialogue. Sometimes the directors ask for more noise reduction, but generally the note I get from directors is too much. It's too much. So early in my career, I got a bunch of those notes. And so as I've aged, the the lower the processing gets on all my plugins. I much prefer a natural, noisier, textured, gritty, whatever sound. I don't like technical errors in my tracks. Like, I prefer to have ticks and pops reduced, but the raw sound of a well-recorded production track is unbeatable. You are not going to improve it with EQ and noise reduction. You're going to take things away from the file. So all the processes we do tend to be reductive processes when we're mixing. You know, you might boost the highs a little bit, but I mean, like high pass, low pass, noise reduction, de-essing, compression, limiting, all those are limiting dynamics or frequency response. So like, I had this really, it's a story I like to tell, and I've told it before. It was 2014, and I had been trying to improve my mix skills enough to be given like a big project. And this company I was working for, the mixer basically took me on as an apprentice and was working, you know, with me to get my skills up to par. So I had done a bunch of shorts and I did like some TV movies, and I was like, you know, I'm feeling ready. I got command of all this. I'm confident in the room. I can take notes. Like, people generally enjoy working with me. So I did a temp mix on this horror film called The Quiet Ones, and really got along with the director and the picture editor well. So Glenn Garland was the picture editor and John Pogue was the director. So this was my chance. You know, like, I went in, did the temp mix, they were super happy. Then a couple months later they came back and say, hey, we're ready to start the real, you know, mix and sound design. And they asked for me. They asked for Tom. They said, we want Tom to do this. And so it was like, whoa, you know, there's this horror film. It's independent, but it was through Lionsgate, and it was going wide theatrical release, like 3,000 screens in the US, international release all over the world. And like, director had done Ghost Ship and a bunch of other big movies. And so I was like, all right, you know, I'm going to just bring all my skills here, and this is where I get to flex my muscles on the first big project. So I spent a couple weeks pre-dubbing the dialogue, and I was very happy with it. It sounded really clean and professional to me. And so Glenn, the picture editor, came in because he's like, well, you know, I want to hear it before John does. So he came in and listened. He just kind of sat there, like, you know, behind me and listened to a reel. And I was like, you know, yeah, man, this, you know, I was like all cocky, like, oh, what do you think? Sounds pretty good, right? And he said, okay, so that's your pre-dub. And I said, yep. You know, I used Cedar. I had a new plugin at the time called, it was before FabFilter came out. It was eQuick. It was this cool, it was basically a proto version of Pro Q3. So I had done all this work, weeks and weeks of work. And very happy with my pre-dub. And Glenn asked, so that's your pre-dub? And I said, yeah. He's like, okay. So now I want you to listen to my guide track. The track that comes with the videos, you know, that you use to verify sync and listen to the editor's temp mix. He said, go to this scene, you know, 4 minutes in, and listen to the guide track. So I flipped the console, you know, soloed the guide track and played it, listened to the dialogue, and it was like, there was noise, and there was like some bumps, and like you could hear the whole ambience of the house and the reverb in the room and early reflections. And you know, I was like listening to it, to all the imperfections, and he said, okay, now stop. And I stopped, and he said, now, same scene, I want you to listen to your dialogue, just soloed. So I soloed my dialogue and listened to it, and I was like listening, you know, it's all cleaned up, like there's no ambience, everything is at the perfect level and everything. And then he said, okay, stop. So I hit stop. And Glenn looked at me and he said, now, Tom, which one of those tracks sounds better to you? And it like caught me off guard. Here I've spent weeks mixing this dialogue, and he's asking me if my pre-dub sounds better than his crappy temp mix that he didn't do anything for. You know, I'm thinking this editor is full of himself, and he just wants to, here, you mix the damn show then. You know, come take my job. Sure, go for it. If you think you can do this, by all means, step up to the plate. But instead of having that reaction, I actually thought about what he said, and which actually sounded better. Like, the quality was better. Not less noisy, perfect levels, EQ, like all that stuff, but which sounded better, like which made me feel better. And I had to be honest with them. So I told him, you know what? I think the temp sounds better. Your temp mix from Avid sounds better because it's full range. It has the imperfections, but like the richness and texture of it sounds like people in the room doing these things for real. And he didn't say anything. He just kind of nodded and said, okay, so I am going to leave, and I want you to go back through the whole film and think about that. Think about the quality of it, not taking the noise out, but just think about what sounds best. and he took off, and I, in a couple days went back through it and had gotten the dialogue less cleaned up. It was still, like, I still had touched everything, but the end result sounded better. So that, like, I know it's a long diatribe, but that was a formative experience for me in using tools like iZotope or Cedar or whatever noise reduction tools you have. You're always going to be taking something away from the dialogue. So just keep that in mind as you're working through a pre-dub or dialogue edit. It's so easy to take things out that destroy the texture and humanity of a track. Just be very careful, because we have all these tools, and like I like to say, if you give a man a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So use them carefully, use them sparingly when they're necessary, but don't feel that you have to use all the tools all the time. So that's the end of my story. Okay, okay, back to comments. I feel like the less affordable stuff comes with room treatment and not hardware, at least for starters. How did you work in college with that? Yes. I just destroyed whatever rental I was in with sound treatment. Yeah, and I dealt with a pretty hefty fine at one of the apartments I was in. Okay. So sending... Oh, I see. Gaston says that processing the clips with handles with Audio Suite will put in silence every couple of seconds. That's not good. Oh, because they're demo versions. That makes sense. Zahira asks, does it make sense to show the director after your dialogue cleanup is done? I mean, should you do a solo pause, probably preview or playback of just the dialogue, or do you make them listen to the whole mix together? That is such a great question, Zahir. I think it's important to... It depends on the director. Some of them don't want to hear just the dialogue. They're, super experienced, and they want to come in when everything is ready to watch. Music, sound effects. They want to watch the movie and make notes on it. The less experienced, well, you have like a bell curve. So the like working class directors who are making money doing this are generally in that don't waste my time category. Show it to me when you have everything mixed together. The less experienced directors at the bottom of the bell curve want to hear every track, and they want to nitpick everything. But then you have the other side of the bell curve too, which is like the super high-end directors. They want to be there for every step of the process too. Sometimes. Some of them completely trust their collaborators, but if you're working with them, you're probably less experienced or you haven't worked with them much. So just ask the director. The best thing you can do with working with clients is make them feel heard and respected, and that they're getting what they need from you. So if they want to hear the dialogue, just make sure you let them know, like, hey, this is soloed. We're going to be adding backgrounds, music, all that to this. But, most of them, they want to see the movie in like a pretty finished form, with the exception of music score and sound effects. They usually like to go through those before the mix. Okay. For YouTube, you recommend mixing in 5.1. Nope. Stereo. Deshaun says, I don't know about you, but understanding compression was not easy, but got the hang of it. Yes, that compression's a really interesting topic. Probably not on point for this video, but the best thing I can tell you about compression is to play around with it and listen to it. Like, close your eyes, bypass the plugin, change the threshold, ratio, attack, release, gain, mix. Like, you can do parallel compression. Just play with it and get your ear used to hearing it, especially on speech, and how compression can negatively impact clarity. If your attack is too fast, it's going to knock down consonants to where you can actually understand less of what's being said in a busy mix. So play with the settings and, get your ear used to that. Okay. CFJR90 says, hi Thomas, how do you approach separating PFX when on top of dialogue? I always struggle with that. Should I try NR to totally remove the dialogue so I can move to PFX? I mean, if you're doing an M&E, then I would say like, it's okay to leave that stuff for the M&E. You don't have to separate everything. Oops, you don't have to separate everything out. You can, but, you know, like generally for PFX, this is what I do. Oh man, I'm way down here. Gosh, and I put on a music track, so I lost all my EQ. We'll move them down to PFX. I'll do a little top and tail fade, and then you have to backfill the gap you've created, and then fade it. So you can do this. It takes a little bit of time, but then you've got your dialogue with no gap, and you've got your PFX. And generally, the PFX can poke out of the backgrounds, and they're fine. If they're super low, then it won't work. But that's kind of the process for that. Yeah, ear training is very important. Sabi says, hi, should I trust my ears or loudness meter? I'm seeing the 23 in my loudness meter, but it's quiet for me. Please help. Sabi, I will tell you exactly how to fix this. Turn your monitors up. Calibrate your room. Get your monitors calibrated at 82 or 85 or whatever, so that the mixing spec you're delivering to is comfortable and sounds like it's at the right level. Your comment is a classic case of your monitors being too low. So either they don't have the ability to produce the volume of sound you need, or you just have them cranked down too low. So crank them up. I think that's all the time I have for today. So thank you guys for checking this out. I know we kind of wandered in and out of iZotope, but the big things I wanted to leave you guys with were the keyboard shortcuts in iZotope for precise editing, Keyboard Mastro instead of Stream Deck, or what's the, I think Stream Deck is the thing, and then what's the software people use with the Stream Deck? I forget what it's called. Yeah, so that is like don't spend the $15 a month on a subscription when you can spend $30 for a lifetime and have a tool that works way faster. So keep all the shortcuts right at your fingertips, right under your fingertips. Don't reach your hand 3 feet over to tap a button on a Stream Deck. You know, get your keyboard shortcuts really locked in for you, and get your settings in iZotope set to where you can just basically operate everything with your hands and not think too much about. You always have to tweak things, but 80%, like get it to where the settings are good for 80% of the issues, and you'll have to tweak them for the other 20%. And then precision is the big thing. Like, get your view zoomed way in on waveforms so that you can get individual sounds out and not be batch processing stuff. So then you're getting efficient, the quality of your work goes up, and you end up processing less. So like it just sounds better and is more precise overall. So those are going to have you guys set up for success. SoundFlow, yeah, SoundFlow was the application. So if you, one last question, Israel asks, what are some films you recommend for having good mixes? The big ones I always recommend are No Country for Old Men, Saving Private Ryan. Trying to think of recent ones that I've seen. Some of the foreign films I've watched have been pretty good. I like war movies, so I'm always going to say like 1917, All Quiet on the Western Front. But also check out some old films. Check out some old westerns. Once Upon a Time in the West is a really good one. The old movies are great because they really show you what they achieved with limited technology. And on those old movies from the 60s and 70s, you can hear every line of dialogue. There's no muddiness of like, what did he say? Like, everything is crystal clear. The Conversation is a really good one to check out. Like, there's just, because the limitation of the technology, they really wanted people to get the dialogue and the performance, and the actors were maybe a little bit better trained to project. So I think we kind of need to go back to that, where we can hear all the words and we're not so just bombastic music and sound effects all the time. But yeah, No Country for Old Men's kind of like a hallmark, like it's like the gold standard for me because there's almost no music. Sound design's really good. It's very tense. Dialogue sounds great. Recorded on location for the most part. So yeah, that's one I would check out. Okay, and then Black Hawk Down is good too, yeah. So yeah, so that's it for the stream for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks again to all the channel members, subscribers, commenters, even if you're just checking this out and you're watching it, all those little things add up. And then the other thing is I have a bunch of tools to help you get started on my website, and I put a link on every video. So if you need like a 5.1 mix template, an Atmos mix template, stereo mix template, iZotope module chains, I've got a practice short film you can download, and like, you know, you could even like do sound design on it and send it to me and I can check it out and review it for you. So I'm trying to, while the industry's slow, kind of lean into YouTube and my website. And so you guys supporting me through that is just super, I'm very thankful for it. And I will keep the videos coming as long as I can. And if you guys have ideas for content or video ideas, just drop a comment. If you're a member, go on Discord, let me know what you want to see. And I try to tailor the content to what you guys are asking for. So until the next video, I'll see you then. Take care.